come back to home in Research Rabbit. We have all these sources. It's time to start reviewing and synthesizing them. Click the Research Rabbit logo in the top left to return home and then go to Library. Select the collection you want, select the source, then click on this link. You want to have about 25 to 50 sources. A minimum of 25 is generally a good rule to get kind of a comprehensive literature review, but this will depend on your topic, especially if there's not a lot of research done on it already. It'd be awesome to have more than 50, but unfortunately, NotebookLM has a max of 50 sources that you can upload into one notebook. So depending on each link, you can click a View PDF. Sometimes they have like a button to download or export the document. Unfortunately, you do have to do this manually, which can be kind of tedious. If you want to try selecting all, export, and then exporting a bibtext, you can try that. Sometimes it will only upload the abstract instead of the full text to the notebook. Once you have all of your sources downloaded and saved in a folder on your computer, come to notebooklm.google.com, and you can click here or here to create a new notebook. You can upload files from your Google Drive. You can even upload websites. I would be careful about that just because you can't guarantee all of the information on a specific website is peer-reviewed. But if you have one you want to use, feel free. I'm going to click Upload Files here. I'm going to go into the folder with all of my files, select all, and then click Open. You can see it's loading them all in. This might take a minute. These sources specifically are on the relationship between advertising and prices. Now, if you do have less than 50, you can always go back and click this to add more sources as you find them. The title of the notebook is almost always inaccurate or doesn't fit the topic super well, so you can just click up here to rename it. Now in the terminal down here, you can ask questions about specific sources. You can compare and contrast. You can ask just a general question. Does advertising increase a product's price? And it will save your chat history so you can go and look through previous questions that you've asked, and then it generates an answer. So the nice thing about NotebookLM is that it will only reference the sources that you've uploaded. So instead of going to the internet and pulling a source that might not be peer-reviewed or kind of misunderstanding the source or your question, you can use sources that you yourself have found and can verify that they're what you want. So it'll give me the general consensus according to the literature I've uploaded. You can ask if a paper includes a certain topic, and it'll generate an answer for you. These numbers reference specific parts of the paper. So at the very bottom, it'll tell you what paper or attached file it's referencing, and then tell you the exact quote that it used to generate that statement. If you click on it, it will take you to the place in the paper. Sometimes you might have to scroll down a little bit, but it'll highlight it in purple. I like to use Control F or Command F to find where it is in the original document, just because sometimes the formatting can get kind of weird over here as NotebookLM reads in the files you've attached. You can click this to minimize it again. Now, it is important to be careful of sources citing other sources, because the information you include in your literature review, you don't want it to be a down the grapevine sort of thing. You want to get it from the actual source. So right here, for example, this paper was written by Taylor, but he's referencing another article. And so the information that NotebookLM might have extracted from that is something that Taylor didn't really come up with. It doesn't have a whole ton to do with his original study. And so then you would go and find this paper if you wanted to use that information. You can click this little filter button up here called Configure Notebook and customize the response length and conversation style. I have these little export buttons up here because I installed a Chrome extension called NotebookLM to PDF so that I can export some of these responses as PDFs. And that's optional, but I'll put a link in the description for that extension. NotebookLM can also translate articles that are written in foreign languages. A lot of times they'll have the abstract in English, but then once you go and look at the paper, it's in a different language, and so NotebookLM can translate it. I'm not entirely sure how accurate it is, but it could probably help you get the general idea. One of the most important things to note here is that you want to do a sanity check for each one of these ideas. So if it's saying that, oh yeah, Taylor talks about promoting competition among brands and retailers, the first step is to go and look at if Taylor's the one talking about that or if he's citing another author. But you also want to familiarize yourself with these sources. So starting with the title, then you can get more detail from the abstract. If you read the intro, that's generally a good way to get a feel for what the paper is about. If you want even more detail, especially on what the findings were, you can sometimes look in the conclusion. And then if you need even more detail, you can go to methodology, data summaries, and things like that. So for your purposes, you should read the title and abstract of probably most of these papers. And then if you're citing something, especially if you're citing it more than once, you want to probably read the intro or at least most of it to get a good feel for methods and more of the nuances of that paper. So NotebookLM is really helpful, but it does not replace reading, especially because it still can make mistakes. A lot of times it'll kind of latch onto something. A paper might mention a topic and then LM will say, oh yeah, it said this and this and this about it, even though that wasn't really the point of the paper. So that's just something to watch out for. But it's a very helpful tool. You can say group sources by if they say advertising decreases or increases prices. And then this says that there's divergent viewpoints depending on if the advertising is categorized as informative or persuasive. And then it'll kind of give you a list of what articles fall into which school of thought. Again, it's important to double check these, but it generally does a pretty good job. If you find a response especially helpful or want to be able to reference it quickly later, click Save to Note, and it will generate a note over in Studio over here. And we'll look more at Studio in the next video.